Welcome to Women Winning Divorce. I am your host, Heather Quick. I am an attorney, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Florida Women's Law Group, the only divorce firm for women by women. I love thinking big, thinking outside the box, creating creative solutions for women, and empowering women to win in all aspects of their life. Our approach at Florida Women's Law Group is to provide women with a strategy to not only achieve their objectives, but win at life. I believe that what may show up as adversity is simply an opportunity to change and improve your life. In each episode, I sit down with innovative professionals and leaders who are focused on how you can be your best self before, during, and after divorce. In these conversations, we are looking at how women can win at life. I have the unique opportunity to meet women when they are at a transition period of life. But that is only the beginning to becoming your best self and winning at life on your terms. With our guests, we enjoy the opportunity to explore ways all women can win and enhance their life, no matter where they are in their journey. Because divorce is just a point in life, not the end and not what defines you, rather a catalyst for your growth. Welcome to today's episode of Women Winning Divorce. I'm Heather Quick, owner and attorney of Florida Women's Law Group. Today, I'm joined by JD Fleischer, my executive assistant, and also a big part of our office and team. And she is going to be asking me some questions today. So we're flipping it around a bit, which is always fun. So welcome to the show, JD.
Thank you, Heather. I'm so excited. Let's do it.
Well, today we are going to talk about busting some divorce myths. Okay, this is going to be good. We'll find out, right?
Exactly. We're going to be Mythbusters today. I'm super excited, and I'm going to start off with an easy one today. The first myth is your spouse must agree to the divorce.
Right. Well, that not in Florida. That is not true, because we are a no-fault state. Now, obviously, the law varies from state to state, and it may be different where you are. And some states require separation. You know, there's a lot of different things, but in Florida, we are a no-fault state. So if you decide you are done and your spouse does not, and that happens a lot, that's very common, JD, where people are, one side is ready to move forward and the other does not want to see the marriage is over, even though I think eventually, I think people come to that realization, that, hey, if this person doesn't want to be with me, then there probably is some things there, issues there, and maybe I need to look at that. But if you're done, you can file, and, as the person maybe who might not want a divorce, your husband doesn't want a divorce, it's still going to happen, right? It may make it a little bit more challenging. It probably will, but it's still going to happen. The court process exists, and it doesn't require both people to agree that the marriage is irretrievably broken.
So is that what the no-fault divorce means here in Florida?
It does, right? Because it used to be that you did have to prove fault. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I do think that this is very helpful to women, because frankly, women used to not be able to get a divorce, right? But a man could, but if there was adultery, but a woman had no cause, or she would have to prove a reason to be able to get a divorce. So now it just means, like, if you don't want to be married anymore, you are not married anymore. I mean, you have to go through the whole process, right? Which, if you listen to the show, there's a lot more to it, but you do not, even though the court's going to ask you why, and, understanding what it means when the marriage is irretrievably broken, you don't have to have what someone might say, in air quotes, a good reason, right? You don't have to.
Right.
And nobody has to do anything really bad either, right? We always think, oh, they must have done something terrible. Not always.
That's what I think about with the no-fault divorce. And so going off of that, this isn't exactly a myth, but it's something that we hear a lot, where people think that they can go and get the correct papers from the courthouse and do it themselves. What is your expert opinion on this statement?
That would be a big fat no. Yeah. No. And for so many reasons. And I do, don't agree with the state of Florida in that they put all these forms out there to make it appear as though this is that simple. It's not small claims court. And small claims court, I will tell you, can still be kind of complicated and confusing. But you if you want to get it done the right way, you have to hire a divorce attorney, someone who has been educated in the law and they have experience in the law to guide you through the process. So don't just ask your brother who is, a real estate attorney or a criminal attorney, and they ought to know better, right? And the divorce laws there are statutes, but there's case law, and then there's how the courts react and things. So there's so much more to it. And if you have any property or children and anything of value to you, don't do it on your own. You are setting yourself up for failure. And worse off than that is you may do things that we cannot fix, right? You may go hire another attorney, try to do it on your own, and then you're going to come back to us and it's not done. And I've said this more than once, it's going to cost you twice as much. So go screw it up. And now if I can even fix it, if we can fix it, or if, you lose time, right? Time is our one commodity. It's an equalizer. We only have so much of it. And I think, it's really important that if you're going to go through it, invest in an attorney and invest in that, and think of that as part of an investment in your future.
Yeah, that is great advice. Do you have to be separated for a period of time before you can file for divorce in Florida?
No, there's no period of separation. And additionally, many times I'm asked, well, can we have a legal separation? And that really, you can have an agreement, but there is, we would not file that here in Florida. That is something that does exist in other states. North Carolina, for one of them. I've had an attorney from North Carolina on the podcast, a few of them, and that's different there. But not in Florida. That is not required at all. There's no time period. It does take time to get divorced, a lot more time to get divorced than it does to get married, but there's no waiting period, and there is nothing in the law saying, hey, you must be separated for a period of time.
Okay. What if one spouse is refusing to sign or acknowledge the divorce paperwork? How does that work?
This is a really good question, because the only way this happens is when you, and I'm going to say you clients, you ladies who are like, I just think he's going to sign. Let's just give it to him. Again, time ticks away. Why are we wasting time? Get him served. This is a lawsuit. The law requires formal notice of a lawsuit, which means we hire a process server, and it's not anything intimidating or adversarial. It is a process of the law. It's your due process right in the law, and it is absolutely required. So have a process server, hand it to him, and then they go file it with the court. He has been served. That is what that means. It is part of our Constitution. It has to happen, instead of, messing around thinking they're going to agree to receive the papers. They don't have to. They don't have to agree to receive. And I think we had one case where they were definitely willfully trying to avoid the process server. And we brought the process server in, I think, at one time, and it's like, I can see him hide behind the curtain.
Right.
So just, again, that's part of having an attorney and listening to why, because I know that your time is a precious commodity, and it's taken you probably a really long time to get to this point to file for divorce. So why are you going to intentionally put 2-week, 4-week delays in front of you? Because every process, every thing that we have to do, think of it as a timeline. You check that box. Now it starts a clock of the time. And so the more times you do these delays, the longer it ends up. And then they'll be like, oh my gosh, it's been 12 months. I'm not divorced. Well, it's because you don't want to listen to your attorney.
Right.
And I think that, many women need to hear that and understand that, we're doing this for your benefit.
Absolutely.
I got off on a tangent. I'm sorry,
that was good. But
gets me fired up.
That situation is a little more complicated. Say your spouse lives in a different state or country. What if that one spouse can't be located to be served?
Look, so those are two different things.
Okay.
Because we have ways to serve folks. We just hire a process servicer in different states. So living in a different state, if this is where this divorce needs to be filed, serving them in a different state is fine. That is okay. And that can be done. And even in another country, a little bit more challenging, even on a military base in another country, again, or military base in the US, a little more challenging, and understand that is not your run of the mill. It's going to take more time and probably a little bit more resources to make that happen. Now, that second thing is if they can't be located, then we have to pretty much do a due diligence search, which is there's a lot of different things you have to do to search for them. And then you can do a divorce by what is called publication. Again, goes back to constitutional law and your due process to have notice that you have a suit against them. So there are ways to do it, but you've got to meet it. So just, you might say, hey, they left and, went to South America. I haven't seen them in 10 years. I have no idea where they are. So it will take some time to check all those boxes to prove that to the court.
Right.
But it can be done.
Okay. Gotcha. Now, will a divorce be granted even if one spouse contests it?
The end of the day, yes. However, it can get delayed. So in order for the judge to determine and grant a divorce, obviously, if the one spouse if he's fighting it the whole time, that means you're going to go to a trial. But part of that is the court is going to ask, the judge is going to want to know from you if the marriage is irretrievably broken. Now, your husband may say it's not, and the court can inquire if they want, but what the court has the power to do and what is written in the law is that if one party requests that the judge order counseling, the judge can do that. Now, most of your family law judges have been around for a while, and they're like, all right, mandatory counseling may not, does not always really work as well. But it can be done. And sometimes that's helpful. Sometimes it's necessary. Sometimes one spouse or the other is using that as a tool for manipulation and control. So it's, sometimes the husband will be like, oh, I still want counseling. And the wife's like, we've been 2 or 3 times. I'm over it. Nothing's going to work. We've done it. A lot of times, if they have previously been in counseling, the court is not going to order it. And even if they do, they're only going to order it a period of time. It can happen, but then the case will move forward and the judge can make decisions, even if your husband is staying the whole time. I don't want a divorce. I disagree with this. That it will prolong the process without a doubt, but you will still get a divorce eventually.
That makes sense. This one I hear a lot, so I think this is going to be a good one. Is it a truth or a myth that you shouldn't leave the marital home until the divorce is final? Okay,
that one is my absolute, classic favorite answer. It depends.
Okay.
There are very few absolutes that you must do, you must not do in divorce. And we should have a show on that because I have a list of plenty of those things. But I would say that is going to depend on your situation, on the home, on the level of animosity and tension between the two of you, the finances and children. So there's a lot that comes into play with that. And I think that in the years past, I'd hear, clients say, well, I met with this attorney. They're like, got to keep the house. And it's like, well, why? I need to know from you, what do you want to do? Right. That's what it comes down to is what are your goals and objectives and where do you see yourself? Many times they're in a house. I've heard this plenty of time. They're like, you know what? One, I don't want to do this on my own. This might be too much work. 2, I don't love the school zone, and maybe they're in private school now, but we get divorced. And, I've heard this a lot, and we'll just move to St. Johns County. We want to go put them in those schools and it'll make things a lot better. So that's an answer that it's not always a yes or no.
Right.
It is something that you should, if you are in any danger whatsoever, you should absolutely leave. That is an absolute. And you should definitely seek those resources. But otherwise, I think you should talk about it with your attorney. You should understand the financial implications. one way or another, and you need to understand what's going on with the kids. So I think I would strongly recommend don't do that. That's a drastic move, moving out without some more information, or without talking to an attorney and understand your situation. And now if your husband wants to just leave, again, you better talk to an attorney, because he might be thinking I'm moving out and I'm not paying the bills. And that is going to be a problem. And that may be a reason to initiate the divorce, maybe even sooner than you thought, in order to make sure the bills keep getting paid.
Right. In the movies and the TV shows, just modern media, we often see that divorce is always ugly and nasty and fought out in court. Is this true, according to your experience?
I would say no. That's going to be our 5%. And the ones that are like the ones that are, and that's unfortunate. But it takes years to get to that point where you really hate the person that you've married. So it's not something we can really unravel or undo in the divorce action.
Right.
That tends to stem from just a lot of bad feelings, and sometimes complex assets and more money, but it can happen, but it's not the norm. It is not the norm. The norm is more of mediating, advocating for your position, but really coming to an agreement that works for both parties.
Absolutely. And I think, like you said, it's not the norm. So something that's more typical, and I think a lot of times our clients experience this, so I think your advice would be invaluable on this topic. Say my spouse has my best interest at heart, we'll just do mediation and it'll be fine if we leave attorneys out of it. What do you think about that?
That's a big fat no too.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, this is my belief, is that is not communicating correctly to you, as if he's going to be so magnanimous and mediate with you. Okay, mediation's required. We spend a lot of time in mediation with our clients, and they have their attorney. And so no one's doing you any favors by saying, let's just you and I go mediate. Really? You should go, not understanding your legal rights, not having anyone on your side,
right,
and resolve all of your issues in your marriage. That is not wise. You don't have legal advice. A mediator cannot give you legal advice at all. They don't represent you.
Right.
So, and we can follow up a little bit more on that after our first break. But we do have to take our first break. And listeners, if you are enjoying this show and believe that other women would like it, we'd ask that you leave us a 5-star review in order to get our podcast out there to women who are interested. We are back from our break. And again, today I'm joined by JD Fleischer, and we are discussing some divorce myths. And specifically in this segment, we're talking about financial divorce myths as we get into this segment.
Yeah, so we're going to start off with a hot topic, prenups, also known as a prenuptial agreement. Are they indicative of that you want to get divorced, or maybe don't plan on being married for a long time? What do you think, Heather?
So as a divorce attorney for over 20 years, I think that a prenup is just a very smart way to enter into a marriage. Because if, when you buy a house, you do an inspection and you do all your due diligence. If you're going to buy a business or go into a partnership with somebody, you're going to investigate and you're going to understand the financial implications and kind of have an agreement as to how things are going to work. We just don't do that in marriage. We think it's just, it's happily ever after, and that would be unromantic. Well, divorce is pretty unromantic, I will tell you that. And you are going to get divorced according to the laws of the state that you live in. Many of us are, like our independence and want to be able to dictate how that would be. And that's what you can do in a prenup, is say, you know what, if this doesn't work, and right now, hey, I love you, I hope it works, right?
Right.
I think that, we'll beat the odds. But while I am sitting here today still thinking, of how much I love you and I want this to go forever, I want to say, if we get divorced, let's plan this out in a loving way as to how we would want to treat each other and how we would want it to go. Because that would be the intelligent and really financially responsibly way to do it. So that is why, as a prenup, even if you're in your 20s getting married, it at least prompts the opportunity to have a lot of good questions and discussions that most people getting married do not have.
Absolutely. Now, going off of that, are prenups, this is another myth we hear all the time, really just for the ultra rich and wealthy, or should everyone get a prenup?
No, and that's where I think everyone should get a prenup and really talk about, because again, it's just like, which nobody does this, but financial counseling. You come to a marriage, and that's one of the biggest reasons that marriages don't make it are finances and money issues. And you come into it with your own financial beliefs, understandings, just based on how you grew up and the way you look at money and the wealth, and that in and of itself might really save your marriage. And I think if prenups are done the right way, with education and with a thought of, we don't want to spend, say, our children's college fund, right? Our children that aren't yet born, but we don't want to spend that on a divorce. Let's talk about how this would be.
Right. All right, Heather, myth or fact? Our assets will be split 50-50 down the middle.
So again, it depends. But marital assets. So that's where the attorneys always get you. It's like, well, the wording matters. And so marital assets will start with an equitable distribution, which is 50-50. And that's where it starts. There may be reasons that might not be, but I think that's a good understanding when you're going in. And what I really want our listeners to hear is, because I know the question was assets, but I'm here to tell you it's going to be debts too. And in most marriages, there's a spender and a saver. And when the saver is our client, she's going to go, well, those are my savings, and that's my 401k, and his credit debt, it's his. And I'll say, I know it's in his name, but in divorce court, your 401k, your savings are his too, and his debt is yours too.
Right.
So if you're listening to this and that just blows you away, that means you guys got to talk about your finances. And I know we just talked about prenups, but maybe it's time for a postnup on these financials. And because yes, that's going to be split. And as painful as it is to know that the assets are going to split 50-50, it's way more, I see more shock in our clients' faces about the debt.
Yeah.
And that's like, what? This isn't mine. And, I just am not even going to get into how difficult, if at all, like we're able to say, this is just his. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't think about that either. Now, is there a way to exclude things from being divided? Say you have a painting that's a family heirloom, or other things that you don't want to be considered in the asset division?
If it's an inheritance, or sometimes let's say the painting, maybe that was a gift, pre-inheritance gift, but it needs to be pretty clear. Inheritance is easy, but as long as you don't commingle it.
Right.
And you need to, identify things and how they are. So generally, I think for most folks, they need to recognize it's all going to get split.
Okay.
All marital things are going to get split. And then some things that are non-marital may have a marital component. So, that's where it gets complicated, and it requires a detailed look at it and to determine, well, is it all marital or not? And what part's not marital? And did you sufficiently keep it separate?
Right. If things like retirement, things in a trust, that would all fall under that category as well.
Retirement it depends, because if you were working and putting money into that retirement during the marriage, even though it started before the marriage, there will be a marital component to it. So some of it, like for easy math, let's say, you've been working at this place for 10 years, you've been married 5. Okay. So that, and it's not going to be a straight percentage because of compound interest. And so you're going to want to maximize whatever your non-marital portion, and not just say, oh, okay. But for this purposes, I think it shows like, okay, so half of my retirement is marital and 50%, I was working during 50% of the time this was put in. So then that might get split in half. The marital portion will be divided. And that's where the math comes in because, all that front money in, that has more value than the second half because of the compound interest. So we usually get a financial evaluation in order to have a clear picture, because if it's your money being split, you don't want, you want to keep as much of it as you can. If it's,
Absolutely.
That's for the husband's attorney to do if it's his, right? I'm not going to just offer to give you less.
Right. Is it true that alimony is only awarded to women?
No.
Right.
That is not true. The alimony is based on ability to pay and need and length of marriage and a lot of other things. Traditionally, it has been. And when I say traditionally, I'm talking, people now have been married 50, 60 years.
Right.
And if we think about really for me, it's more my grandparents' age. Those were, your World War II folks. Now they're, of course, deceased. Baby boomers, a lot more dual working. And so, in the Gen X, we have more women bread owners than even before. So that's where alimony comes into play. I think that, we historically, and I think even now, we see alimony is awarded to women more often than men. But that could just be in, this particular area of the country. There are going to be other more urban areas where you might see more of the fathers having more of a stay-at-home involvement with the children, where the wife is the breadwinner. Therefore, she might be more, subject to potentially paying alimony to her husband, more exposure. So I think it's really, it's changed a little in regards to with society over the years.
Well, that leads me into my next question, because I want to talk about the infamous Florida permanent alimony. Is that awarded very often?
I would say probably, but the cases have to really specifically narrowly fit that definition. Okay. And again, what I was talking about, but you're going to see that in the 40 plus years of marriage.
Yeah.
Where it was very much, what you would think of as that historical, what was that show? Like a Leave It to Beaver, or even Brady Bunch, even though that was probably racy Brady Bunch, like, a blended family or something like that. Right. But where the mom was just at home.
Right.
And never, ever really did anything. Yes, I've had a ton of cases in the past 20 years. Well, and probably, 25% of those out of all cases were definitely permanent alimony. They really absolutely fit that definition. Wow. But many, just because they had met the years married requirement, they were still really young, or they were educated and there were opportunities. So maybe it wasn't going to be permanent. Mm-hmm. But I think prior to this, I would say 25% at least of the long-term marriages were certainly permanent alimony type cases.
Wow, that's interesting. All right.
But now it's no longer valid. Like, I guess we do need to, that doesn't exist anymore. Permanent alimony does not exist in the state of Florida. And so I apologize, because yes, we've done that for so long, and I know that, but for our listeners, that is no longer an option. However, there are still lots of types of alimony, and there are a lot of exceptions that are new in the law. So don't get too devastated and reach out to an attorney if that's a big concern of yours.
Right. All right, Heather, we got another truth or myth.
Okay.
I don't pay unless you as my attorney win my case, or I can use my settlement to pay attorney's fees.
So, no, that is a personal injury type case, contingency cases. And I do want to explain, on one hand, that's just not allowed in the state of Florida to take a divorce case on a contingency.
Okay.
That is against the rule, our professional ethics rules. You cannot take a divorce case as a contingency. And similar with a criminal case, you can't do that.
Okay.
Only pay me if you win, like you can't.
Right.
So, but it does work in the personal injury and that realm. So no, you have to pay your attorney throughout in a divorce case, and you may receive, more sums and use some of that to pay your attorney's fees. That can happen, but I want to be clear, it can't be anything you enter into a contract with your attorney that I'm going to, and in this manner saying, okay, I'm going to get, 30% of your settlement. Like that would not be allowed. And I want to clarify that because it's very well known. It's a great system in personal injury cases. It's just not allowed in family law type cases in Florida.
But can you request your spouse to pay for your legal fees?
Yes, and you can always request that, and the law provides for that. But often, during the divorce, sometimes we're putting it on credit cards, and that's joint marital debt, or it's coming out of marital money. So again, yes, we ask, but all the money being marital, and so therefore, really, he did pay for half of it anyway, and you paid for half of his. So
right. Now, for our last myth in this segment, the court will assign me an attorney if I can't afford one or don't have one.
That is a no. Okay. No, that is only available in criminal cases where you have the potential for jail more than 6 months. So no, that is in the criminal realm. The court is not assigning you any attorneys. So you need to find one to represent you.
Great.
Now, that has been great. This is a great time for our second break. And listeners, we would so appreciate if you left us a review so that other women going through the divorce process can find our show. Well, we are back from our last break. And again, today I'm joined by JD Fleischer, and she is interviewing me today. And in this last segment, we are discussing custody, child support, and time sharing myths. Now, so Heather, go for it, JD.
I was going to say, no, Heather, custody is always in favor of the mother, right? Is this true for us here in Florida?
It is not. It is not. And I know you said that with a smile on your face because you've been working here long enough, of course, to know that. But so first, custody, that word seems to imply that is something you own and possess. In Florida, it is called time sharing. And so we do not use the word custody when we are talking about children. We say we are sharing time with them. And as far as that goes, there is a premise in the law that the parents will have equal time sharing of their children. So the belief that the mom gets the children more often than the father it's just not as common anymore.
Right. Now, say you don't trust the dad to parent on his own. Will the judge agree with me, and will he see that, or will they see that he is unfit to parent solo?
So that it really is going to be very dependent on the facts. And when we talk about being unfit to parent alone, like losing that ability, he's really got to have a mental disease or disorder and a diagnosis or some serious substance abuse that we can really dig into, some psychological issues.
Right.
And I have been doing this long enough. I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of women over the years, and I get it. He doesn't bathe them as good as you, and he doesn't put them to bed on time and feeds them junk food.
Right.
Now, sometimes the food could really cause problems. I recognize that. And that's an issue. That's on medical care, for kids who may have issues. But, for the ladies listening, I got to tell you, you chose this guy to have a child with, and he's entitled to parent them. And it's going to be an uphill battle. There are some, and we have fought them and we have won on the parenting and men who were unfit.
Right.
And we've defended some women that had a lot of issues that they may have found to be unfit, and they weren't. So it is, the courts really don't have a lot of sympathy for your disagreement for the way he's going to parent. And it's looking at their safety. And by safety, I mean their health and wellness, their safety, right? Like, is he threatening them? Are they going to be in danger? And yes, and you can get caught up in, well, long term, they'll get overweight and fat if they continue to eat like this. It's going to have to be more than that. We see the courts and the judges see really extreme cases. And it's always, I bring that up because not to minimize your issues, but yet the judge is going to.
Yeah.
They're a human being. They've seen some terrible cases and of neglect and abuse that they may or may not be sympathetic. And there are a lot of cases where, that parent probably needs some help and work. And that's going to require evidence, not just your opinion as the mom. And we can get that evidence, and we can do that if you're willing to do what it takes and hire the right people to help us, get to that answer so that they can testify to the judge.
Right. Now, what about child support? Say you stop paying child support, will you lose visitation or custody rights?
You will not. You will not. Those are, that's paying child support you have to do, allowing the parents to have time sharing, you have to do. They're not mutually exclusive or they are mutually. Like, just because you didn't pay doesn't mean you get to see them. Just because you don't see them doesn't mean you don't have to pay. Like, they just both have to happen. And if they're not, you have to seek the child support. That remedy is not taking away their time.
Okay. That makes sense. Our next myth: all of our problems are resolved after divorce. We will be better parents apart.
Yeah. For some people that's true. For some people that's true, but you got to really work at it. I think that all parents have to work at it continuously to be good parents. And to co-parent is difficult, even when you love that person, because you both come from different, backgrounds and families of origin, and you just have, usually different ideas. And that's where, it compromises. And I think that you got to hope that to be true, right? But you can't never communicate with that person. And if they're a high conflict person or you're a high conflict person, I'm going to tell you, it's going to be difficult. But if you're committed to making your child's best interest seriously, the focal point of all decisions that you make, then yes, then at least you'll be a better parent. You cannot control the other person, but you can control the way you respond and react to them. And you should focus on what you have control over, but you are going to be still bound to this person by the virtue of your child. And just, and they'll say, well, they're almost 18. And that's true. And that's a great thing. But if it is so difficult up until the time they're 18, those wonderful experiences and great things that are going to happen in your child's life, and they're going to want both parents there, you're going to ruin for your child as an adult because you couldn't get it together and control your response. And so then the graduations, the weddings, the babies, you got to be careful. Don't get left out of that.
Right.
And once they're an adult, they can do that. And that would be heartbreaking for anybody. I can't imagine. But, if you can't let go of that emotional garbage and the hate and the anger, it's going to show, and they're going to know. And the last thing you want is you're like, oh my God, but the dad, my husband was the worst and now they hate me. Well, because you couldn't control yourself, your emotions, and just try to keep what's best for your child at the forefront, not what you think is best for you or to punish the other person. And I think then you can, and recognize that, you and your ex-spouse are different and you're going to parent differently. Ideally, on major things and big things, you can both put aside your egos and come to those same decisions. But that takes a lot of therapy and a lot of personal growth. And I would say it's worth it for yourself and for your child, but that's where you got to place that, right? You got to
Yeah,
determine that it's worth it on your own. And then it's definitely possible.
absolutely. Now, I know we touched on earlier a little bit about staying versus leaving the marital home. What if you were living in a place that you didn't like or didn't want to be living in because of your spouse? Can you move during a divorce? And how does that change if you do have children together?
Um, well, that depends. You you can move, but you can move within 50 miles
Okay.
of that residence without court permission. So if you're like, you know what, I always wanted to live in Atlanta, so we're moving. I would not recommend that. Or, well, I'm just saying flat out, don't do it without
Right.
permission. Because then that gets into a whole another realm of legal requirements and things to do. So, but I would really talk to your lawyer about it. And again, hopefully with your lawyer, you've already worked out what your goals are, what your objectives. So where does that line up within that? And then if it doesn't, maybe it's time to figure out your goals, your objectives, and then wonder why you're doing that. So it does matter. It does matter when you have children together and you're sharing them and you're doing it in the one house and then you're moving. So a lot of things are going to be implicated. And you don't have to stay living together. It's just, you need to understand the legal implications.
Right. That makes sense. Now, this one I know a lot of listeners want to know. Is infidelity weighed heavily in my case? And how does the court punish the cheater?
Oh, ladies, he doesn't punish. She doesn't, nobody punishes the cheater. I unfortunately, there's no punishment to be had. We're no fault state. We started this podcast talking about no fault. Okay.
Right.
I think most of us would agree infidelity is fault.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's no fault. So it doesn't matter. I'm not going to say it doesn't matter because it matters to you.
Absolutely.
It is irrelevant to the judge. Unless there has been misappropriation of marital funds and that's been used to support this extramarital relationship. And in the case of alimony, now the court can consider infidelity. So this is brand new and I can go either way, right? It doesn't say if there's infidelity, you don't get alimony, but the court can consider it. And maybe consider it on the husband's part too, but that one we're going to wait. So we're going to follow up on that one. It's really going to take at least a year or two probably to see maybe some cases that interpret that. But I think there's a lot of creative ways on both sides that we can see how that infidelity might come into a case. Mm-hmm. And prior to July, my answer would have been like, no, it's really going to be irrelevant unless you can show a lot of money that was used toward that. And by a lot of money, I mean tens of thousands of dollars. Right. $5,000, ladies, we're going to spend that showing it for what? I'm not saying we won't, but let's be clear. If, like the old, like Godfather, where they had the mistress set up in a condo and all that. Okay. That's a lot of money. Right. That's money that we need to go after. Sometimes the littler ones, yes, it matters to you. Yes, it shows that it's been done, but in the grand scheme of things, how much will come back to you, I don't know. So it's just, again, big picture, right. Very hurtful things, very, very hurtful things, but we don't run the divorce based on our emotions. Your attorney doesn't.
Absolutely. I think that'll be interesting to see how that plays out over the next few months and years. But lastly, to wrap up this episode, truth or myth, Heather, my life is over after my divorce.
No, I completely disagree with this. Now, your old life, that part of you, that season is going to be over to some extent, but really it's an opportunity basically to reinvent yourself, an opportunity to start over and maybe really, find those things about yourself that you might have put, on the shelf, or you just didn't deal with, or you didn't really follow your passions or do the things that you wanted to do because you were married, or you felt like, well, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I've devoted my whole life and that's what I'm supposed to do. And, this is an opportunity to really find yourself and to discover who you are and what else do you have to offer this world. Not that being a mother and a wife isn't great. It is, but
kids grow up and they're supposed to leave the house, right? And I mean, I'm only get partway into that with the college, but you got to find a way to fulfill yourself and be a fulfillment to others. And so you may not be married anymore, but you are so far from having your life over.
Right.
There's so much more out there for you, I believe.
It's good to hear.
Well, thank you, JD. It's always fun being put on the spot and getting to answer your questions. And I know these questions come from many of our listeners, so we thank you so much for providing those to us. And I can't wait to do it again, JD. So I know you'll be collecting more questions and myth busters as we go throughout the year.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I had a lot of fun.
Well, it was great having you. And for our listeners, if you or someone you know is going through divorce or is thinking about a divorce, of course, reach out to us at floridawomensLawGroup.com or join our Facebook group, Women Winning Divorce. The link will be below in the episode description. Thank you for listening, and please leave us a review and let us know who you'd like to be our next guest. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Women Winning Divorce. My goal is to elevate your life and the way you are thinking so that you are best equipped to win at life. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe so you automatically get my new shows every week. And I would love to hear from you personally. Come join the conversation on social and join our Facebook group, Women Winning Divorce. We welcome your comments and suggestions. We want to bring you content that helps move your life forward. Women Winning Divorce is the place for an elevated conversation on how women can